Hey folks, welcome to a podcast about Catholic things. This is Eric, the Ambassador of Common Sense, and I'm here with
Dan, the Ambassador of Nonsense. Welcome, everyone.
And we're going to talk today about overpopulation, which we've touched on several times before, or the myth of overpopulation. We talked about is environmentalism Catholic, and we've touched on it through other subjects, but I don't think we've ever done a whole show about it. And I don't know why. I don't think many people fall for the overpopulation line anymore. But I think as Catholics, we ought to not just not fall for it, but actively fight any kind of sentiment that would limit the number of children being had by good families. Even from our Pope, who says that we breed like jackrabbits, or was it just rabbits?
Yeah.
Something like that. I don't know. It's disgusting. Our own Pope would say that. I guess we should stop breeding and then dwindle while the Muslims continue to breed and take over the world. I don't know. It's just, Catholics should have a lot of kids.
Well, it's interesting.
That's what I believe.
You're right. You don't actually hear much about overpopulation anymore because the new mantra is the environment.
Yeah.
And I have to wonder whether the reason that shifted is because it's easier to get away with bad science if you're using the environment as your scare factor to try to control people. Yeah,
because you start talking about chemicals that are developing that, say, only NASA is able to look at, like, the ozone and things like that. And it's like, well, I don't know how to prove anything for or against that. If you tell me the number of people, right, I can work up some statistics and show you how there is no overpopulation. But if you start telling me that even a small number of people are destroying the planet, then a lot of people don't know how to argue with that. But
right.
I thought, we've never done a whole show about it. And even Catholics, even mostly the novices, when they talk about this, they'll say, even the ones who accept the fact that we ought not to be using contraception would also always be real quick to add, that doesn't mean Catholics should be having as many kids as they can. You can abstain. Right. You can use this method or that method to be careful and to be responsible. Those are the favorite terms. And my argument is, I hate to say this, but good Catholics ought to be having as many children as they can. That's my feeling on this. When God created man and woman, the first recorded command he gave was to fill the earth. Go have babies. Here, I gave you something that feels absolutely great and brings a man and a woman closer together and also produces children which help you later on as you're getting old. Now, why wouldn't you do that? Why wouldn't you want to do that? Well, I know it's hard. I know it's difficult. But, I don't know. I wanted to attack this subject from a couple different aspects. And number one, of course, we don't know what God thinks and feels and stuff. But we know what he told us. And we know a couple other things.
Yeah. And we know that his providence never fails.
Right. Now, we also know, here's the thing, we know that because the fact is that we live in a fallen world. Now, we have no idea how this would have worked out if Adam hadn't sinned. Right.
But, the command to multiply and fill the earth was pre-fall.
Yeah, it was.
And so we don't know what kinds of technologies would the human race would have developed, either in terms of getting more food from the ground, or maybe going out and exploring planets. Who knows how things would have gone without sin? But the fact is, we live in a fallen world, and our fallen world, our fallenness, has created in us. This is something that we believe as Catholics. And so these are arguments kind of for Catholics by Catholics. Or, somebody who's not a Catholic is not going to see things this way when we talk about stuff like providence.
Right.
But when the fact is, we encounter natural disasters. We sort of placed ourselves in a state of enmity with the rest of the universe.
Yeah.
By sinning. And we've seen from time to time that some kind of disaster, maybe a plague, I think a plague is the most common, comes and decimates a population. Like you're left with a tenth of what it was.
Yeah.
On a broad scale, on a small scale, it can be even worse than that. Whole towns may be wiped out or whatever. But the point I'm making is this, that we should take God at His word and trust that He has whatever reasons He has in His providence for that. We don't know if at some point there's going to be something that decimates the human population. And if we're busy limiting our own population before that, it becomes almost unbearable to live after that then.
Yeah, that is
where,
that's something I don't even think about that. Yeah. But in terms of, I think.
But I don't think, I'm not saying it's okay to exceed the bounds of what the earth can support because God will take care of it by wiping us out. No, I don't think we're close to exceeding those bounds.
Right.
I don't think we will exceed those bounds. I'm just pointing out that even if you believe we would, as a Catholic, as a Christian, we have every good reason to simply trust God at His word.
To trust Him at His word, fill the earth, and accept that He wants it for a reason. I mean, He created man out of love. And His love is not limited the way even ours is. I mean, when I was, a lot of times a young family who has one child will maybe start thinking about another child and worry that, well, am I going to love this one kid less if I have a second one? And people with large families know that that's silly. That's not the way it works. Yeah. Your love doesn't... Yeah. Your time, they could stretch the heck out of your time and your resources your time, and your money.
Your capacity to show individual affection and all kinds of various things like that. Well, of course, part of the problem is that these days that's what people equate with love.
Yeah, that is a problem. But the love is there no matter what, and it doesn't become like a pie graph where you can give to each kid a certain amount of your love. Your love grows to compensate for the new member of the family. And we should understand that aspect of God's love because God can always love us when we exist. And so His love doesn't grow or diminish anyway. That's the other part of it is that God is infinite, and you could have infinite number of people. God would be happy with that because He wants more people to love. And also to accept something that this is unpopular. This is something that Bishop Barron just came out and in some heretical statements concerning.
I saw that.
Yeah, the number of people who
I heard a podcast
might be in hell. Jesus didn't give us a proportion, but He did say many people would go to hell, and I think for a lot of us that has to mean maybe more than half. But what we do know is that many people will go to hell, and that means there's a limited number of people who will eventually make it to heaven. The more people we have, the more people, hopefully, will make it to heaven, especially if it's good Catholic families having the people.
Right.
All that does is produce more for God to love. God's not limited in what He can love, and He wants as many people in heaven as possible. That's why He came down to die for us. And why that sacrifice is unlimited because he wants more and more people in heaven. That can only happen if we reproduce. Mm-hmm. I think I've talked before about the fact that, because a lot of people think we're in the end times. I kind of don't think so. It seems like we're... So I go back and forth. But
sure, there's a lot of stuff going on that kind of sounds like end times, but I tend rather to believe that we're in the end of the beginning times.
Yeah, that's how I think. Look, God, we're starting to get a handle on just how big the universe is, and and as you've pointed out, there's no reason to believe that it's not infinite. That's all there for the greater glory of God, and we haven't really gotten past our own solar system yet.
Yeah, in terms of any sort of exploration. So I'm thinking, and think of it this way, like you said, God wants as many people in heaven as possible. And, let's face it, heaven is and when we talk about heaven, we kind of, as Christians, we know it's not just going to be like this space that everybody goes to. It's not like these weird Heaven's Gate people that believe they're going to be taken up with a spaceship and flown to some, wherever. Right. What we're gonna do is enter a state where we are aware. We are living in the beatific vision, seeing God as He is and aware of that, while at the same time, because we have bodies, we continue to live out a material existence in a universe that goes on forever.
Yeah.
But only the people who are in the church, who are saved, are going to be here for that universe. Well, so God wants as many people there as possible. And if you just think in terms of the bride of Christ that the church is, that is the body of those people who are going to be saved, why wouldn't you think that God would rather choose to get that project started near what is ultimately the very beginning of human history? We know that there was, at least several thousand years, if you're a young earther, 6,000 years, if you're a young earther, before the coming of Christ. And so He's going to come and only give 2,000 years worth of His church developing, and then it's all over? No,
that makes sense.
If there's only 6,000 years, I'm thinking it's going to be 600,000 years before it's all over.
Yeah. And if you're an old earther, even more so. And
it's even longer than that. Exactly.
Probably
right. So that's
going beyond our own planet. I think.
Well, I'm just.
I think eventually,
in terms of,
we're going to find other places to live, and we're going to fill those up too. Why? Because God is infinite, and He wants more people.
And gosh, we're starting to discover, exoplanets left and right anymore.
Yeah.
Now we also are starting to discover that Earth itself is rather peculiar as a planet. I think the more scientists see and find these exoplanets and are able to, it's hard to observe directly, but the little bit that they are able to get from them and the various models they come up with,
they're very unlike Earth.
Yeah, like Earth shouldn't exist.
Yeah, the perfect distance from the sun, the perfect amount of water, the perfect surrounding planets to keep asteroids from slamming into Earth constantly.
Right.
The perfect moon.
But even things like for the models that they have for solar system formation, a planet like Earth should not form at this distance from the sun. That they're finding.
The amount of rock and metal and air. Everything about the Earth is spectacular. But
nonetheless, I think we will find other Earth-like solar systems out there.
Yeah, we've got billions to go through. And we
galaxy.
We haven't gone to any of them yet. So I think God's got a lot longer for us. But regardless, I'm just pointing out that God's ability to love and ability to compensate the number of people who get to heaven, I'm sure He wants a lot more than what's already been. So the idea that we should limit the population is ludicrous when the one thing he told us from the very start is go have babies.
Yep. First commandment ever given to a human.
So, I just wanted to point that out. I guess the other directions that people come from is things like the planet's ability. Let's not even talk about the whole climate change crowd yet. Just the planet's ability to produce food. I guess in the 60s and 70s, I can kind of see how people got scared when when people started talking about this. It was like, oh no, we're suddenly producing, and they saw especially Americans, because Americans had this giant nation that was really not very populated. You know, I mean, you've got cities, but you've got miles and miles between each city. But people were seeing the population grow inside the cities. And then they had these wonkers come on and tell them that the growth you're seeing is happening everywhere, all over the world. And within 10 years, we're not going to be able to produce enough food. And I don't know exactly the statistics they gave them, because it depends on what year that you're talking about, because they kept changing them, and they kept changing the terrible things that were about to happen to us and how long that was going to take. But I can see,
right.
I can see as America was growing how that might have scared some of them. But we know now that the more advanced we get, the more people we have, the better we are at producing food. And there's so much of the planet that isn't producing food right now.
Right. And we know that there are techniques for farming, technological and non-technological, let's call it technological and organic techniques to increase the density of food production too. I mean, it requires manual labor to do it. It's not like you can just go out and throw some technology on the ground and then it's going to produce it. But that's actually a good thing too, because that involves people in the project.
Jobs.
Of farming and so forth. But we know that there are ways to make food produce more densely than the older farming practices.
But one of the questions is, why did this lie get started? Why did somebody suddenly start saying, oh, we're going to run out of room on this planet? Somebody at some time had to think this up and start talking about it. And I sometimes wonder, first of all, why did it start? Second of all, why did it gain such popularity? And I guess when I see right now people like Bill Gates, did you ever? I guess you don't watch King of the Hill. There was a King of the Hill episode.
No,
where
I keep thinking I should, but I know because you send your text messages out with quotes.
Yeah.
And I know it's going to be exactly like every other time I say, oh, I'm going to watch this show because it seems funny.
And then it's not going to be funny. Yeah, I know. Okay, there's an episode where they go off to Montana to visit Hank's wife's mother, who lives on a ranch in Montana. And the problem is they're going to close the ranch because in the surrounding area, the land is being bought up by movie stars who like the wide open spaces, and it's causing problems because they're not letting the cattle do what cattle normally. They're not letting them use their land to go through to get to the water or stuff like that.
Oh, right.
But they had Henry Winkler on as a guest star, and he had bought the property next to the Kings, and he didn't want their cattle going through because it would get the water all muddy. And I guess that's kind of the way I see these rich people like Bill Gates who are worried about overpopulation, but it's not really overpopulation. It's just that the more people we have, the more we have to spread out. So there are areas that are vast and open right now that will contain cities. and suburbs.
Yeah.
That's what happened in America. America was one
It'll
giant
be harder
wilderness.
to not have to interact with people.
Yeah, that's what it is. It's not that... I understand you like nature, and we're always going to have vast nature-filled lands, but...
Yeah, I mean, there's
you got
plenty
cities.
of spaces that are just not fit for building, cities and stuff in.
But you got... It's my opinion that God created ecosystems to take care of land until human beings move in. Mm-hmm. I mean, the Great Plains had buffalo running through them, helping the grass grow, and we killed off all the buffalo. Well, I don't think that was the greatest thing, but the fact is,
no,
that land is great for cattle.
But now it's great for cows. Yeah.
Now we stopped putting them in fields and we started raising them in tiny stalls. And I don't necessarily agree with the whole industrial farming technique or industrial meat growing. But the fact is that land ought to be used by us to farm or to farm. And I know we did farm it with grain for a while.
Crops or cows or whatever.
And there's some evidence that the way we were farming brought about the Dust Bowl. I don't know how much I believe of that.
Not doing proper crop rotations, stuff like that.
Things like that, not digging far down enough. But I mean, ultimately, it was a drought.
The
that
way
created
you farm
that
doesn't cause the rain to not come.
Yeah, I don't know how much I believe about. I think we had a terrible drought. We had like a 10-year drought. That's bad, no matter where you are. But it was really bad in the Dust Bowl because the area was so big and flat so that these dust storms could get built up and really make their way all the way to New York. But either way, it was a temporary thing, and it's gone now. And not only that, we've discovered new ways to get water. We find underground water that we can tap into. Now, there's some people who are saying that we're using that up and that it won't be there for long. I don't know how much I believe of that, but I do also know that we figured out how to make dams. We figured out how to store huge amounts of water. California doesn't do that. California's always on fire. But God made an ecosystem, and when we move in, that ecosystem is destroyed. But we make our own ecosystems. There's nothing wrong with that. I think nature's beautiful, but nature's there to take care of the land until we get there. God meant the land. God built the land for us. Why not go in and take it and use it and do what he wants us to do with it? To act like we ought to preserve as much as possible for being untouched by humans is idiotic. What's it there for if it's not for humans?
It's there for us. It's kind of weird. There's an analogical idea that somehow we should not introduce isolated populations to the modern world, which is just as idiotic, especially for Christians.
Yeah,
it's like, for some reason we have to allow them to, even though they're humans, we have to allow them to believe that they're the only humans around and never introduce them to us.
Yeah, it's incredibly irresponsible and idiotic, and especially, like you said, for a Christian, you going to let all those people go to hell?
Yeah. Well,
don't they deserve the shot at heaven that we have? Not that they can't go to heaven, but there's a better way and a more sure way. Shouldn't we give that to them? Don't they deserve that?
And let's be honest, they probably won't get to heaven without Christianity.
Yeah. Most of them probably will. As a matter of fact, when you find those kinds of cultures, like in the Amazon right now, there's murder everywhere. There's cannibalism. Mm-hmm. There's rape. All the bad things that happen that human beings do, they do it in those cultures too. Only more so.
Right.
Shouldn't we try to save them?
Let's let them go to waste as human beings It's kind of a similar thing to land that we have. Okay, wait, this land would be great for use as, growing animals, feed animals, or as growing crops, or as producing power, or whatever, to say, well, we got to preserve it pristine. That's just saying, hey, God, this land you made for us, we're going to let it go to waste.
Yeah. I mean, the areas of Africa that half the year are grassland, the other half are deserts. That land could be put to farming or living or anything else, just by building dams and using there's all kinds of ways we could use that land. But instead, it's all parkland, and people are not allowed to use it. It's idiotic. It's like, I can't think of how many ways that's stupid. But that's what people do because it makes them feel good to see huge areas that are untouched by humans. I will admit there's a certain beauty to it, but it's there for people. It's not there for one guy to sit and look at and enjoy, or a few choice people who are rich and who can get out of the cities to live in. And that's the big thing that bothers me about this, is that overpopulation, I think the real part of it is an elitist thing, and it's all about making more room for themselves so that they don't have to deal with us dirty city people who, I think it's a class thing.
Yeah.
I think it's all about class. And in undeveloped countries, all the people are on top of each other, but those countries often have huge amounts of land that could be used by those people. It's just not used because everybody's shoved into a city. And the more tyrannical a government gets, the worse that gets.
The more unused the land gets.
Yeah, for instance, China. China's huge. There are vast lands out there that are not being used simply because the government doesn't let them use it and corrals everyone into cities, which is what they're trying to do here in the U.S.
Yeah, they want to force everybody into urban living so that they have their wide open spaces for themselves.
Yeah, and then they can say, well, and then it's much easier to convince someone that overpopulation is a problem when that person's life is in the city.
But when you can't go 3 steps without bumping into someone.
Yeah, and when you got a job like mine where I'm driving, not flying, but driving from state to state, and I drive for hours without seeing a single house, it's like, this whole overpopulation thing is just
dumb.
stupid.
Yeah, it's dumb.
There's so much beautiful land out here.
I mean, even and you and I are both supporters of the national parks and the national forest designations and stuff like that. But even those programs, and largely introduced by Teddy Roosevelt, his mindset even was not one that we would classify as the kind of let's waste this land that God gave us. He introduced the National Parks Program so that Americans would always have places that they could enjoy going to hunt.
Yeah, for free. Well,
now, of course, you can't do that anymore necessarily, but that was his idea behind it.
Yeah, but even if you're not going to hunt, to just go hiking. Daniel Boone National Forest, for example, is a giant swath of land in the middle of Kentucky. There's these huge gorges. You also heard us talk about Red River Gorge. That's Daniel Boone National Forest. It's an amazing place, and we've been going there every year, and we haven't even covered half of the scenic trails that you could get to in this place. It is an amazing place.
There's our favorites. We like every year we'll hit 1 or 2 that we've done before and try a couple more that we haven't done yet.
Yeah. And again, we're not even close to going all the way through this place. Now, somewhere not too far away from Daniel Boone National Forest is Lake Cumberland. Mm-hmm. Lake Cumberland was an area much like Daniel Boone Forest. It was a giant gorge. Yeah. They put a dam up, and now there's a ginormous lake where all kinds of other life happens. You know, there's fishing and boating and swimming and all the things you could think of that you would do at a giant lake. There's just as much wildlife. It's just different wildlife. It's not the same wildlife that was there. But it also provides water and energy for millions of people. So, again, you know, here's the land. And if you go to either one of these parks, whether you're on the lake or hiking through the forest, you don't have to have a whole lot of money. You know, I mean, I guess if you're going to go on the lake, you got to have a boat or be able to rent a boat.
Yeah, I mean, if you want to rent a boat, that costs money. Like if you get one in a marina.
Yeah.
You know.
But it's not an amazing amount of money. It's a couple guys could go in together and blow a couple $100, and that's it. As far as the hiking goes, you go for free. You just if you're going to stay the night, you got to buy a little tag for $20, but it's all free, and that's what the national parks were supposed to be like for us to use and be able to visit nature. But this whole deal where we're going to buy a whole state and not allow anyone to develop anything on it just so it sits there and does nothing, it's insane.
It's ridiculous.
And again, this is all about a certain class of people being able to enjoy it so that they don't have to see the rest of us moving in. A lot of these lands should... Africa. Africa should be covered in suburbs. And it could be. Mm-hmm. Now, I guess, you know, various nations have various ways of doing it, so the different governments might not always cooperate with each other, but some of the bigger ones could very easily dam their rivers, start farming, and start cultivating the land so that it's useful for people. They could become very rich nations. And on top of that, have a lot of people in them that becomes a military force. And on top of that, it would interrupt some of the migration of some of the animals. Like, you know, they've got those herds of millions of, what do they call them, buffalo-type things that...
Oh, the bison?
Not the bison, but they're smaller.
I don't even know that.
You do. If I say the word, you'll know.
Emus? No. That's the
bird.
I'm
looking at a picture of it, and I can't...
Shoot.
Wildebeest.
Oh, wildebeest. Okay.
Yeah, they've got millions of wildebeest roaming throughout the land, chasing the water. Well, if they put up dams, it might interrupt some of those migrations. But the thing is, those wildebeest wouldn't have to migrate. They could stay in one spot, and you could still have the wildebeest. You just wouldn't have 5 billion of them. And then you would have less lions and less hyenas. You still have some, but you wouldn't have it to the point where it's a danger to human beings. You can have much like it is in America with the Alaskan bears that are kept under control. We've got plenty of bears. There's no shortage of bears, but they're not constantly eating human beings. And they could have that in Africa, but they don't because I think what happens is I think the corruption in the government causes the park lands to get out of control to where they control more and more land and won't let people develop it. And it keeps people poor. And that's why there's so much poverty in Africa. Because if you look on a map that shows you where is parkland and where is not parkland, it seems like most of Africa is parkland. If it's not a city, it's a park.
I've never even looked at something like that.
The giant,
I never even considered the idea of parkland in Africa.
Yeah, it's almost all parkland. All the Congo, the Sahara Desert, it's all park, and it's useful. It's not being used, but it's very useful land. And even land that's not being used, or even land that doesn't look like good farming land, Look in China where they have a whole mountain covered in these little plateaus, all man-made to grow rice.
Yeah, yeah.
I mean, you could see that in nature shows too. And it's like, we find all kinds of ways to develop land to use it to make food. There is no limitation here on the amount of food we could make. I guess the other part of this is that, well, then there would be a lot of carbon dioxide. I wonder how so many people swallowed the carbon dioxide lie.
The more land you farm, the less carbon dioxide there will be, because the plants need carbon dioxide. They eat it up. They consume it.
Yep.
And creating a lot more carbon dioxide is one of the things we would have to do, one of the things that we should be doing to make the land produce more food.
Yep.
I think we actually should have a world that's about, at least 3 times, maybe 10 times as rich in carbon dioxide as it currently is to produce the amount of plant life that our planet ought to be able to hold.
Yeah. And of course, eventually you get around to, it's making the planet hotter. And look, we've talked about that 1,000 times.
Yeah.
There is so much land right now that cannot be farmed because it's too cold, or it can only grow certain crops that will only grow in the cold. Heating the planet up is not going to destroy anything. It's going to give us more food. If we could heat this planet up 2 degrees, I'll bet you we'd have twice as much farmable land.
The only thing it's going to destroy is the coastal homes that rich people have.
Yeah, who cares? Like, we care whether or not they get to live on the coast. And it's not like the coast disappears.
Yeah,
it just moves a little. So what? So Obama loses his beach house. Who cares? I say move it. I say let it happen. But the fact is, Obama doesn't believe in any of this crap.
That's why he owns beach houses, or I don't know if he specifically owns beach houses, but that's why rich people
owns a beach house.
Homes right on the sea, because they know this stuff isn't going to happen.
Yeah, the people who are screaming loudest about this and tell us and warn us that in 10 years the coastline's going to move, those are the people who own those homes. And they're not doing it to protect their homes. They know that it's not, they wouldn't have bought it there if they were worried about that.
If they thought it was a real danger, they'd have bought homes elsewhere by now.
Yeah. So we're getting back into environmentalism, I guess, because the whole theory of overpopulation kind of revolves around that, or they revolve around each other. But the big point here is that we're nowhere near overpopulated. We have a lot of people who are stuffed into very small cities. Sometimes you find out that a lot of those people want to be in those cities. Like if you go to New York,
enjoy the bustle of. I mean, think of it like, okay, we come from and have large families, and when there's a lot of people around and a lot of activity, it's enjoyable to us.
Yeah.
Of course, family people and activities that are like in the home and that kind of stuff. Well, there are people who derive that same comfort or even have that same need, but a different kind of activity and a different kind of people. It's not necessarily family. It might be total strangers, but just the fact of having a bunch of people around them all doing stuff. There are people that's just, the world that they want to be in.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you watch, say, sitcoms that are filmed in New York or supposed to be filmed in New York. I'm thinking specifically How I Met Your Mother. How they make fun of the country bumpkins. Yeah. Okay. It's obvious they want to be there in this overpopulated city. They don't want to be anywhere else.
Yeah.
What they want is to be able to visit somewhere else where there won't be any people. And then the few people, but here's the thing, they don't understand that to own that kind of land and to live in that kind of way, for for most of the human population takes a lot of work. Whereas rich people want to go there and have all the work done for them by someone else, and it's a lot different. Farmer Joe is not the same guy as the Bill Gates buying out a giant farmland and then, well, of course, he doesn't even farm it. He's been buying up farmland and letting it go to waste. He's been buying farms and not farming. He is part of the problem right now of lack of food because he keeps buying farms and then doesn't farm. I understand China's buying a lot of American land too. I don't know how true that is.
Is it China's Chinese interest or the Chinese government? Maybe I don't know which is because I don't know that there's a distinction, but I don't know that there's a difference. I guess.
Yeah.
But I've heard that they're becoming like the largest owner of American farmland, which is really scary.
Yeah, very scary. Between the Chinese and Bill Gates, and then all of our food processing plants apparently blowing up and burning down. And I don't know, I'd say we got a hard time coming, and the first thing they're going to say is, see, we're overpopulated. and now they're trying to feed us bugs. Have you seen that?
No.
Some of the stores are introducing cricket powder, trying to say that the most nutritious thing to eat are crickets.
So they dry out crickets and grind them into powder?
I guess that's what they do.
What do you, like, make shakes out of them or something?
I don't know. But they're trying to dissuade people from eating meat because cow farts destroy the planet and instead eat insects. The whole thing is so bizarre. But I think I would go back to the fact that the elites want a big empty space that they can go and be, and they don't want it to be farmed, they just want it to be. Whereas thousands of people would love to move out of city and have a small farm. I hear people say that all the time. Oh, I'd love to have a little farm. Maybe that's just like, maybe they're just wishing they could go to a place and relax in the country and they don't know that farms actually require
I think
work.
1 in 100 of them, if they had to actually work a farm for a week, would stick with it.
Yeah, but either way, there are plenty of people who are stuck in cities who can't get out of cities.
Don't necessarily want to be.
Yeah.
But
and so I could see...
I don't think it's just about wanting to have a place where they can go that there's nobody there. I mean, when you talk about the elites, excuse me, obviously, like Bill Gates comes to mind. I don't think he's buying farmland so that he can have a place to go, I don't know, walk around and contemplate nature or whatever. I think there's a more specific plan at play that has to do with how to maintain control of populations.
How to maintain control, but there's also...
I don't mean of the number of population. I mean how to maintain control of people.
I know what you mean. And I think that's there. But there is still a feeling among the elites that there are too many people. And they want less people. And I think ultimately this is diabolical. I think this is something from the devil himself.
Yep.
To have less people.
I agree wholeheartedly.
Why? Because God wants more people. That's why.
Yeah.
I think it's just a direct affront to God's will. And I think as Catholics, we should be fighting it. And I think that means breeding like rabbits. When impossible.
We should be doing our part to as much as possible populate the world, and populate the world with Catholics,
with good people who are raised up in the TLM. It's not just about
popping out babies, but it's about raising those children too.
Yeah, and the more good people we have, the better the world will be. The world's good when there's a lot of good people. When there's a lot of bad people, the world's bad. Right now, there's a lot of bad people. We've got to
shift the balance, shift the ratio.
We've got to
having a lot of children and then raising them to be good.
despite what Pope Francis says.
Yeah, gosh.
Yeah, I guess Bishop Barron came out and said that I said something about this, but we didn't actually say what he had said. He had said that there's a reasonable hope that hell will be empty. And there's no reasonable hope that hell will be empty. He also acted like there's some kind of weird psychopath pleasure when Catholics correct him. Like I'm glad that I can protect...
Like, we're gleeful that only a few people are going to be saved, or something like that.
Yeah, that's...
Like, we take pleasure in the fact that a bunch of people are going to hell.
Which is so weird, considering most people who are what you'd call on our side of this are trying in every way possible to make it so that more people get to heaven.
Yeah.
I mean...
Now, one of the things, it's like, okay, it maybe not very Christian, but from here, this side of the eschaton, or whatever they call it, we perhaps incorrectly, but we might take a certain pleasure in the idea that, for example, a Stalin or a Mao Zedong is probably in hell.
Oh, yeah.
Now, the thing is, I know that like St. Augustine and, for example, St. Thomas Aquinas, I think also, both believe that on the other side of the eschaton, one of the joys of the faithful who are in heaven will be knowing and witnessing the torture is in hell of those who opposed God.
Okay.
Now, I don't know if that's true, but those are two great philosophical saints who believed that.
Well, I think Bishop Barron specifically mentioned St. Augustine.
And that might be where he's getting that, but St. Augustine isn't being gleeful over the loss of souls around him right now. St. Augustine is just pointing out that on the far side of the eschaton, we will know why those souls who are in hell are in hell. We will know why that is a proper fulfillment of God's justice, and we will revel in God's justice.
Yeah.
How could we?
That is true.
We not?
That is true.
So, I think that.
Yeah.
And then Bishop Barron is taking that idea and twisting it into like we're some kind of sickos.
I don't think that's it at all, though. I don't think he's even deep enough to think that far. I think he is. This is a pre-strike against those who would look at what he says and say, "Well, look, I don't know how to tell you this, but you're wrong. There is 0% chance of you being correct. There's just you happen to be wrong." And I guess there is a little bit of smugness that comes in when you've got bishops who have done such a poor job of hurting the church and hurting the sheep, who are so bad, and finding yourself on the right side of things. It's someone like Bishop Barron.
It's kind of weird because he became popular for this so-called series that he developed of about the Catholic faith, and I was always very underimpressed with that. I mean, and here's why: because if a bishop is going to go say, "Hey," because he had some meeting with the Pope. I forget if it was Francis or Benedict, but he basically said, "Hey," kind of gave him the project of taking that faith he had and then getting it out there, evangelizing, whatever.
Yeah.
And so he developed this series on the Catholic faith that was out a series of videos and stuff. But to me, if a bishop's going to do that, then you do that and then you disseminate it as widely as possible. How do you do that? You don't put a copyright on it.
Oh, yeah.
But what he did was he developed it and then sold it. Now it's a commercial product. It's a commercial endeavor, not the spreading of the faith. You know,
so are the
not one of the
encyclicals.
apostles ever charged a dime for letting people hear them speak.
Yeah. Does he really sell things? I don't even know. We're talking about Bishop Barron, right?
His initial thing was like, I understand that there's a production aspect that has to go through the production and get the DVDs made and that kind of stuff, but you had to buy it. But it was copyrighted, so parishes weren't allowed to just make copies and share them with each other.
I see. Okay, yeah, he's got a lot of crap that's for sale.
So, yeah, I mean, to me, he's just another commercial hack.
Hell, it looks like he's got
a bishop who's gone commercial.
He's got a perfume, it looks like.
You gotta be kidding me.
Scent story, it is said that Bishop Barron Vertical.
Maybe it's
looks
not
like
him.
I think so. It
You
said
gotta be
Barron
kidding.
Bishop. No, okay. Barron. This is something different. Okay.
Okay, good. Yeah, I mean, I wasn't...
This scared me a little bit. Really?
Yeah.
Selling perfume?
And I could even understand, like a product. Like, for example, Mystic Monk coffee. They grow the coffee beans. They roast them in their monastery because part of the monastic life is labor and prayer. And so then, in order to, kind of support their efforts, they sell the fruit of their labor. Okay, but that's not the faith. That's not evangelization. That's a specific physical thing. You can only sell it once. It's not like, I could go out and make like coffee bean faxes or something like that of each other. But when a bishop goes out and creates a teaching tool, a evangelical message and a explication of the faith, that bishop has no business slapping a price tag and a copyright on that.
Look, when you've got a bishop who is not leading men to God, instead seems to be leading them in the other direction, who on the national stage told a Jewish man, no, you do not need to change your faith in order to get to heaven.
Yeah.
I do take a certain amount of pleasure in finding something solid that I could say, no, see, you're
that
wrong.
He's so completely wrong about.
I can show you how you're
that's
wrong.
True.
You're wrong.
And that's very different than taking a pleasure at people going to hell.
If you listen to
You know what I mean?
some of our podcasts about, say, things like abortion, one of the things we lament the most is the fact that women who do this, first of all, we don't know what happens to these babies, but the women who go through that and who end up killing their child, whether it's just because they don't care or because of despair, can very easily end up in hell. And the whole idea here is that we don't want people to go to hell. I don't think anyone takes glee in the fact that so many people go to hell. I don't think anybody likes that. I think he's wrong. I think it was more just I'm going to punch back because I know I'm going to be punched for this because I'm so wrong. And I'm going to throw a quick punch back so that if anyone does point out how wrong I am, then I will have taken care of that already by saying, oh, you're just happy that people are going to hell. I think that's all that was.
Yeah, that could be.
So, I don't know. I guess the reason I brought that up is, again, the fact that there are people in hell. God doesn't want people in hell. He wants people in heaven instead. And the more people we can get to heaven, we're coming back to the beginning point, the better. And the only way to do that is to have more people. And we don't need to worry about the earth's ability to hold people and nourish people. As a matter of fact, if it got to that point, then what do you think would happen? People would starve. And then what? There would be less people.
Well, that was like an early 19th, late 18th century. You've heard of Malthusianism or
no?
Like there was a Thomas Malthus, I think is his name. Kind of developed this theory that eventually, because the human race kept growing, there would be widespread starvation and famine and so on and so forth. And he first laid this theory out in the late like 1790 something.
Okay,
right, pretty soon after the founding of America. And I think that is what got picked back up in the 1960s as the sort of the so-called science behind the population bomb concept.
Yeah. Well, I guess I'm just pointing out that if that did happen, then the problem would have kind of a natural up and down, wouldn't it?
It's a problem that would take care of itself in a sense, yeah.
Yeah,
absolutely.
So who cares? Okay, so we get so
right.
many people that we can't feed, and some people don't, because of malnourishment, people end up dying, and then we'll have less people.
Or just not reproducing.
Yeah, or not reproducing, because pornography gets so big that people stop looking for wives and husbands, and
that too. No, but now there are some who would listen to what we're saying now and say, okay, but you're missing the point because you're simply being glib about the idea that human suffering will end up being the solution to the problem when if we practiced birth control now and limited the population growth, we could avoid that human suffering in the future.
Okay. Well, you're right. I was being glib.
I don't think it works that way.
But
I
doesn't
don't think
work
we
that
need
way.
to worry about that.
I
really don't.
I'm truly not worried about the world getting to that point because the more people there are, the more we seem to be able to produce all the things we need.
Yeah. People solve problems. More people solve more problems.
And again, I do believe someday we will conquer space. But
more people solve more problems faster. That's why.
Yeah.
That's why technology accelerates as the population grows.
Yeah.
That's why it's a feedback loop.
Look, we've got people out there who think that the solution to overpopulation, which isn't a problem at all, I mean, if it's just that you don't like living this crowded, then move to the country. There's plenty of space. But if you think this is a problem, and you think going to Mars and turning that into a place that's livable is the solution, why don't you just, instead of going all the way to Mars, why don't you go to the desert and just start there? Say, how can we make this livable?
Desert, like the Gobi Desert or something like that.
Go somewhere.
We have cold deserts.
Cold or hot, make them livable. Things can be done.
Yeah, exactly. Put your project into something like that. I mean, what if some of these lands became arable? Oh, wait a minute. How could we do that? Maybe if we could warm up the northern third of the earth.
Warm up the earth, but I'm just saying that there are areas all over that are unlivable. Make them livable.
That you could work on making livable. Yeah,
not necessarily the same project, but just the
the
idea of making something livable. That can happen all over this planet. Yeah. And there's no reason to go to Mars to do this. It's idiotic to think that's a solution to anything. But I think there's different kinds of people who have swallowed the overpopulation bait. I mean, there's a group of elites who know that overpopulation is a myth, except that they don't want as many people to be here. There's another group who are spreading the lie just to make things more manageable, to get everybody into cities and to control them better. I think there's say the bottom of the barrel, people who, for instance, would believe that the earth is flat. People who are just not real bright and okay, these are the kinds of the guys who were in the FBI, the governor kidnapping thing. Speaking of which, that's coming up in the news. Anyway, these guys were these guys were
idiots.
pothead idiots. They get together every now and then and they brag about, I don't know, doing something that they think is somehow going to save their state. And,
probably while smoking dope.
Yeah. And they're, the FBI came in and saw how they could take advantage of this. A lot of the people who believe in overpopulation are like that. They're just really, really dumb.
Kind of flat earthers, yeah.
Yeah. But there's a middle ground here, and I don't quite know how to place them. Why? Is it just because it's been pushed in their heads since they were born that there's too many people? Why are they swallowing this? That's what I can't figure out. Because I know people who are somewhat intelligent, and yet they fall for this.
Well, it's kind of interesting, because I was trying to find who first proposed overpopulation, and I was thinking, somebody in the 50s or 60s, something like that. That's when I came up with this Thomas Malthus, who I remembered, oh yeah, he was talking about that way back before any of this. But there was this link, The Myth of Overpopulation and the Folks Who Brought It to You. And the very first paragraph says, the claim that the world will become dangerously overpopulated has never been true. It was false when first postulated in the 19th century. That's Thomas Malthus. It was false when the population bomb was first published in the 1960s. It is false now. That this theory is still taught in grade schools all over the world, and I think that's the problem, even today, does not make it any truer. It remains a false theory. Now, and I think that, to me, that it is taught in grade schools, and I think that's why there's so many people, because in grade school, you're in that mindset of receptivity. You believe what you're taught. You go through this phase of unquestioningness, and then once you reach the stage where maybe you do start questioning stuff, well, you can't go back and question everything that you were ever told and reconfirm everything.
Right.
And so for a certain number of people, this is one of those things that just got planted in during that time, and they've never bothered to go back and re-question it. But here's the interesting thing, that this is kind of ironic and rich. This paper that I just read that first paragraph from is on the USCCB's website.
Huh.
Take that, Pope Francis.
Yeah.
I would not have expected that from the USCCB.
I wouldn't have either. You never know with these guys.
That's right. Anyway, so but I think that answers your question about that middle group. It's simply that these are people who, this is what they were told when they were in that receptive stage, during grade school, and it just happens to be one of those things that they never went back and re-examined.
I guess so, and I guess it's hard for me to envision that because we were brought up to question everything we're told, no matter what it is. I'm not going to swallow this without looking into it, but I do remember. I don't know what grade I was in, maybe 4th or 5th grade, maybe later, 6th or 7th. I was reading, Dad had these books with very colorful photos. I think it was published by Time Life. And there was one on evolution, and I was looking at a picture of a baboon. And I was commenting to Mom, I said, look at this. You can see how this baboon kind of came from this dog. I was talking about the relation between dogs and baboons. Yeah. If you look at their snouts, they look a lot alike. Yeah, it looks
like a dog snout. That's right.
And she just said, I don't believe in evolution. I said, what? I mean, I had never heard of anyone not believing in evolution. It never occurred to me that somebody doesn't believe in evolution. What are you talking about? And we got into an argument, and I guess it was like a week long where I'm like, how can she not believe it? everybody says it.
come
You
back
know,
with more
all the
stuff.
scientists. Yeah, I kept coming. She never answered any of my like scientific questions.
Right.
She just, well, I just don't believe in it. And then I thought I got to prove her wrong somehow. That's when I started reading about it. And we happened in the house to have a bunch of books about it. So I started reading them, and I thought, oh, wow, I've been taken for a ride. And I guess from that point on, anything that any school told me, I questioned from the very start. I thought, well, I don't know about this. I should check into it. And I should find out if there's a reason not to believe this. And I found out that a lot of the stuff that the school says, I have reason not to believe. But I guess not everyone has that kind of
either experience or the thing is, when Mom said, "Yeah, I don't actually believe that," that mattered to you.
Yeah.
Some people aren't born with that.
Right.
That idea that, wait a minute, that we have to agree on the truth.
Yeah, I guess you're right. Some people just, well, you think what you think, and I think what I think. Whereas my thing is, no.
If I'm right, you got to agree with me.
Yeah, this is truth, and we both need to recognize it. You can't be my mom and not recognize truth, and I can't be your son and not recognize. There has to be, one of us is right. One of us has to be right. Which one is it? And
exactly. So
yeah, I guess some people think it's opinion.
They don't have that. They don't have that. It's just not part of their character.
Well, I believe in God, and you don't. To them, it's like saying, I like blue and you like yellow. And it's like, well, wait a minute. Right. No, it's not. One of us is...
They're not the same thing.
This is an opinion. And I remember in school, I think it was in high school when I went to Hughes, we started talking about that, and the teacher kept referring to it as opinion. And I kept saying, this isn't opinion. God either exists or he doesn't.
Yeah, it's a question of truth.
It's a belief, but it's not an opinion. And
an opinion is chocolate tastes better than vanilla ice cream.
Yeah. I couldn't explain this to the teacher. They would not understand what the difference was.
Well, you know what's interesting is that when we went to school and learned the distinction between fact and opinion, we learned, that opinion is something that is equally true for everybody who has one, even when they are disparate. I say vanilla's better, you say chocolate's better. Well, those two statements contradict, but we're both right, because that's the nature of an opinion, that it's personal.
Yeah.
Whereas a fact is in reference to an external thing. It didn't actually used to be that way in the pre-Enlightenment concept of discourse. An opinion was a proposition about the real world that somebody held and then would set out to defend against other propositions, but it was understood that there is a real world out there that you're trying to match and then express in your opinions. And I don't even think people had like a category for things like, questions of taste and that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
If those were, I think considered so unfit for even momentary consideration that nobody bothered to categorize them. And you know what I mean? But now we have this ambiguity. So we have this old way of referring to matters of deep discourse as opinions, but then this new modern concept of an opinion as merely an individual taste, and people conflate those and then take comfort from the idea that, therefore it must not matter. I don't really have to resolve whether or not God exists, because that's an opinion.
Well, okay, that would make a lot of sense. And I guess somehow that boils over into overpopulation.
Yeah,
some people are of the opinion that the world is overpopulated, and
Even though it's fairly easy to show that it isn't.
Yeah, you can take them on a ride through the countryside and say, look, we've been driving for an hour and a half. We might see an occasional farmhouse, but look how much is open. We're not overpopulated. Yeah, but,
how many more
we will be.
Plunked down in this area.
Yeah, and it's like, well, we will be. Some areas are overpopulated. You tell me, how long has London been there? How long has England been there? There's no farmland in England?
Or Paris.
Yeah, all these lands. They act like, if the theories on overpopulation were true, then those areas would be one giant city.
Yeah.
There wouldn't be suburbs or farmland or anything in those. It would all just be a giant city. And Africa even more so. Because that, according to evolutionists, that's where we started. So Africa would be just the whole continent, like one giant city.
Populated.
But it's not. It's sparse, and there's hardly anyone living there. And
right.
Look, I guess we have to keep going back to the fact that God wants us to reproduce. And He wants us to raise our children to love Him so that He can get them to heaven and love them back. Or love them back before they're in heaven. Either way, He wants them in heaven. And we should want them in heaven.
Mm-hmm.
And, I remember once I said to my boss, I said, I've never met anyone from a big family who wished they weren't from a big family. And my boss said, I do. And I said, you're from a big family? She said, yeah. And you would have rather have been like an only child or only have one sibling? She said, yeah. Now later I found out her big family is 5. There were 5 kids.
Oh.
That's not big, but...
I know, that's just getting started.
That's growing.
That's a growing family. That's not a big family. I guess...
It wasn't that she doesn't like
there's that
the big
pocket,
family.
Isn't there? Where
but...
like 3 to 5, it's like small
that's kind of
enough
a weird number.
Carry a selfishness through.
Yeah.
You get into 6, 7, and 8, there's a dynamic that changes.
But the thing is, it's not that she didn't like being from a big family. She just didn't like her family. Like the members.
Okay. That's a different thing, too.
And I don't think I could have made her see that. But when I heard her talk about her sister or her mom, that's what I heard. It's like, you just don't like them. And
it's not that you like how many of them there are.
Yeah, maybe for good reason. I don't know, but
yeah, that makes.
I
sense.
still insist I'm right. I don't think people from big families wish they weren't from big families. I know a lot of old people who lament the fact that they didn't have more kids. And when you go visit old folks in old folks' homes, you'll hear that a lot.
Mm-hmm.
You'll hear it an awful lot, and it's sad because it's like, well. Not all of you, but I know some of you could have had more kids, and you chose not to. And that's why you're in the position you're in. I say, if you've got working reproductive organs, use them.
Yeah.
You will not regret it later in life.
But go have kids.
Get married.
That's right.
Use them. And 30 years from now, the real work will be over, and you'll get the benefits. There's a lot of work, but it's worth it. I can't think of much more I got to say.
Are we going to do any or would it be cheesy to do any of the stats? Like,
well, do you have any? I couldn't find any.
Things.
I remember that at one time everybody could fit into the state of Florida, and I thought, well, that's a pretty good one to me. But then I thought, well, are they like shoved up against each other? And then I found out, first of all, everybody could fit in the state of Rhode Island. I didn't mean Florida, I meant Texas.
Right.
Everybody could fit in Texas with 0.2 acres to live on. That's not that many.
Well,
but you have some
acres. Well, okay, so
to live on.
Are you talking about per family or Because what I've got is if you take 9 billion people and you just plunked all 9 billion of them down in Texas, each one would have about 200 square feet.
200 square feet.
Them. Yeah. So
okay.
That's like 13 by 13 area.
That's
around like a room. Each one would have a room size area around them, between them and the next person. All 9 billion people in the world in the state of Texas.
That's a lot of room to me. Mm-hmm. Considering how small Texas is compared to the rest of the world, and considering the fact that because we know how to build things, a lot of those people could be stacked up on top of each other.
Yeah, we need vertical housing and stuff. I mean, we're not suggesting that there could be some kind of weird, workable thing of moving everybody into Texas. We're
right.
Pointing out
I'm just saying
how much space on the world there is compared to how many people there are.
Yeah. Yeah. But you had some statistics concerning farming.
Well, I kind of looked up, so I found a thing that was showed worldwide arable land. And by arable, I think they mean actively farmed. I don't think they mean potentially arable, because we've talked about how there's so much land out there. Probably 100 times as much land as is farmed right now could be turned into farmable land if people undertook that project. But just the farmed land right now, and going on the statistic of about 2.67 acres of consumption per person, we need about 3 billion acres of farmable land to support the current human population of 9 billion, but there is about 8 billion acres of farmed land in the world right now. So we're already at a point where, 2.5, we've got enough farmed land right now to support at least 2.5 times our current population. And with all of that land that could be turned into arable land, I don't see that there's any reason from a food production point of view to be concerned about the Earth's ability to support a growing human population. In fact, what made me start thinking about that is, we had heard about overpopulation questions and theories and this kind of, going into high school and everything.
Yeah.
And there was this high school biology teacher I had in my, I want to say sophomore year of high school, let's say. He was not, I don't have any reason to think that even though I went to a Catholic high school, he should have been Catholic, Christian, whatever. But I don't think he was. I think he was a fairly liberal guy. He was, he was in the Peace Corps kind of thing, that kind of guy. But it was he was a biologist, and he was our biology teacher. Mm-hmm. And he made a point during, he took the second half of a class and made a point of talking about food production versus the human population. And the end result that he got us to was that there's not even close to the human population outstripping Earth's food production. And that there's not even close to the Earth's population outstripping the ability to transport food safely to the people who need it. The only thing there's lacking, and here's where I think maybe he was a little bit of a liberal, the only thing that's lacking is the money to get it there. There's no reason that a single human in the entire world has to starve except for lack of money. Now, of course, we realize, and we've referred to earlier, that what often goes on isn't a question of the lack of money in terms of either people's charitable willingness or anything else. It has to do with governments and regimes and tribal leaders and warlords and so forth doing what they needed to do to control their populations. That's manufactured famines and so on and so forth. That's what really goes on.
Yeah.
But this was not a guy coming from a conservative position as far as I believed then and as far as I've ever been able to determine since then. And he was making the point. There's more than enough food to go around.
Yeah.
But the other thing I always bring up, and as the population grows, I have to keep checking this because it's on the verge of being where, depending on what you consider the average person, it's on the verge of maybe being not, to the point where it's starting to stretch. But this is something like Dad mentioned, and I thought, oh, no way. When I was in high school, but I went and checked it. Yeah, he's right. The entire population of the world could fit in 1 cubic mile.
Really?
Yeah. So what do you think the average? You've got some men, grown men, and then you've got a bunch of kids, little kids, and then you've got people who are pygmies and all that kind of stuff. What do you think the average height of a person is?
I don't know, 5 feet maybe?
Okay, 5 feet. What do you think the average shoulder width across of a person is?
2 feet.
Okay, 2 feet. I think it's more like 18 inches, but let's go with 2 feet.
Okay.
And then front to back, average.
I don't know. 8 inches, 6 inches. I don't know.
Okay, let's say
let's see. My feet are
0.75
foot long.
Huh? You're what?
My feet.
Okay, let's say a foot.
Long.
Let's give it a foot. Okay,
a foot.
So average human, and this is an average of all the little itty bitty babies, the kids, adults, pygmies, tall people, whatever. 5 by 2 by 1 foot. Okay, times 9 billion people. Okay, now, and that gives us, because it's 10 cubic feet then, and that gives us 90 billion cubic feet of space that all the people in the world would take up. Now, let's do miles. 5,280 times 5,280 times 5,280. 147 billion.
You've kind of lost me.
Okay, so the point is that if we take a mile times a mile times a mile, that's a cubic mile.
Okay.
That's 147 billion cubic feet.
Okay.
But we just calculated that you only need 90 billion feet to fit the whole human population in. If you were going to pack it in,
see.
not quite like sardines,
yeah.
But well, shoulder to shoulder, chest to back, basically.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I can go for that.
The
1
whole
cubic
human
mile
population. In fact, let's go ahead and figure out where if we go with our average of 5 by 2 by 1, it comes out that up to 14 billion people would fit into that 1 cubic mile.
So we've got a lot of room for growth. I would say,
and I don't know why a cubic mile would be any kind of a measure of room for growth in the earth. It's like a surprising thing.
It is a surprising thing.
Yeah, the whole human population will fit within 1 cubic mile. It's like, no, that doesn't sound right. And you go do the math, and yep, sure it is.
Yeah,
and it'll be that way for probably a couple more years.
Somewhere along the line, we stopped looking at human life as a gift.
And started looking at it as a cost.
It's some kind of scourge,
Yeah.
My son gave me one of those sonogram pictures, showed me a sonogram of his growing baby. And I could see the feet real well.
Yeah.
Now, she's not even showing. She's just barely starting to show now. And, it reminded me of the little feet pins that people used to wear.
The pro-life feet.
Because that was, as small as it was, that was the actual size of little feet. And I haven't been able to hold a baby in a while because we haven't had any babies in the family for a while. So I'm looking forward to this baby being born. And, I don't know. I'm astonished that people don't look at human babies as a gift, as a good thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
And even during hardship time, it's like, even when you don't have the money for it. I had one of my sons said to me, I don't understand how anyone could afford to have a baby. I said, I don't either. And yet we keep doing it. So,
and it's a joy every time.
Yeah, you can't worry about it.
I don't mean about the sex. I mean about the baby.
Yeah. Well, they're both, and it's like you don't worry about that. You don't sit and worry about there being too many people in the world. If you are, you're dumb. Don't worry about all the other
like you're
billions
inhuman.
of people.
So somehow you
live your
miss
life
out on being human if that's what you're worried about.
Make your family, make your life, and worry about yourself. And maybe injustices in the world that you can help and make better, do that. But don't worry about there being too many people in the world. That's idiotic. Just take joy in the human beings that you know.
Do what you need to do to raise them and feed them.
And get them to heaven.
Yeah.
And that's all you got to do. All right. Think we're done on that?
Now we're done.
Okay. Got a little bit. I don't have a whole lot of news. So, I guess there's wildfires in Algeria. It seems like every week there's a new wildfire in a different part of the world. Right now there's a pretty big one in Algeria. 38 people dead so far. 200 other injuries. There's 39 different forest fires in the northern part of the country.
Wow.
So I guess they're trying to get those under control. Look, in America, we have California, which is always on fire. Now, granted, it's pretty dry there at certain times. But the rest of the country, we've got other dry areas of the country. And if there's a forest fire, it's like a really big deal because it happens so seldom.
Yeah.
And it just seems like if you guys would manage your forests properly and log when you need to log and store water.
And stuff.
Yeah.
Well, that's one of the things we like in Yellowstone and the Serenity. They do controlled burns because they know that fire is actually it's a critical part of the ecosystem in some of the the northwestern areas. There are pine trees that they won't open up and release their seeds unless there's a fire.
Yeah. But even without the controlled burns, when you separate parts of the forest by logging, you don't destroy the the natural.
Right. You don't destroy the ecology, or the ecosystem, or whatever.
Yeah, and you still you limit the amount of damage a forest fire can do just by strip logging, and they do that in a lot of states. And most states don't have to deal with forest fires. I don't know if they do that in other countries or not. But we're hearing an awful lot about forest or wildfires, mostly in other countries and in California.
There's a sense in which, because you talked before about how America, we had this vast open land. We started building cities and growing cities, and then people, started using that as a sense of alarm. But in America, because I thought where you were going to go with this is that we developed means of doing things like extending the human life expectation and that kind of stuff, because we are an innovative country. I think there's something, we're losing it. But I think there's something that is somehow a little more manly about America than most of the rest of the world, in this sense that we set out to fix and change and impose our will on things. Okay, we want to use this land. Let's use it for people to live in. We still need the forests. Let's make it so the forests, when they catch fires, don't harm people. We have this way of saying, let's change things so that it suits us. And there's a manliness about that the rest of the world seems to lack.
There is, and on top of that, it creates a beautiful thing. You've got some cities that practically have the forest through them.
Yeah.
We've got cities like you go in California, and there's this valley where there's a giant city, and it's surrounded by mountains. And I don't know, Lake
I know what you
Cumberland,
mean.
things
Yeah,
like
the
that.
effect is really nice.
There's something beautiful about it. And granted, nature in the wilderness is beautiful, but it's not less beautiful when man comes in and imposes his will, especially
Right.
if he does it the way Americans have done it.
Yeah.
Now, some countries like China or India, when they come in and do it, they just destroy everything.
Completely exploitative. Right, exactly.
And admittedly, that stinks, but it doesn't have to be that way. Let's see. The Chinese Foreign Ministry spokesperson says that China will oppose any trade deals with the Taiwanese government, between the U.S. and Taiwanese government, and told the government to stop making misjudgments.
China's getting ready for a full-on invasion of Taiwan.
Yeah, stinks. I'm on the same page here. The trial against 47 pro-democracy activists in Hong Kong has just begun. 29 activists have pleaded guilty, 18 pleaded not guilty. So Taiwan is about to take the same path that Hong Kong took, and it's a shame.
Yeah.
But, I mean, there's not much we can do to help them. We can't even... We've got this idiot bumbling president who seems to think that most of his energy should be spent fighting Russia in Ukraine. And it's like...
I mean, with this stuff going on, I mean, especially China and Taiwan, it just really interests me to know how would this be different? And I know that it would be different.
If Trump
were in the White House.
Yeah. It'd be very
different. It would
different.
not be playing out this way.
Yeah. Speaking of Russia, they said they're going to shut down Nord Stream, the gas line, for 3 days for maintenance.
Okay. Oh.
I didn't know it was going. I thought it was already shut down because I heard maybe certain parts of it are. Because I heard like a month or two ago in the news we were saying that they've suspended development of Nord Stream, but maybe parts of it are working, parts of it aren't. I don't know. I don't understand that.
I keep thinking. I mean, a pipeline like that, I gotta think that like it supplies multiple points, and will run it as far as it's built so far. Yeah.
Well, this war against Russia is hurting the world in a lot of different ways, and one of the ways is energy. But see, it's not hurting the world in terms of energy expense because we have plenty of energy here in America. What's really hurting us is shutting down our own streams of energy.
That's true.
They're trying to make it look like it's this war with Russia, which when the war first started, when it looked like Ukraine was about to be attacked, I think we even mentioned back then that they're going to look at all the gas prices and they're going to say it's because of Russia. And that's what they're doing. So, let's see. Okay, so they're saying that remember last week all them fish in the Oder River died in Poland and Germany?
Yeah.
They're saying that there's
okay, what's upstream of that?
There's a certain algae that they're saying is overgrown, but the algae is linked to industrial pollution, and they're saying that's what probably killed the fish. I don't know if I buy that. Maybe.
Is it? See, I don't profess to know a lot about this to even have a right to an opinion, but doesn't it seem more intuitive that the industrial pollution would kill the fish, and then because the fish are dead, the algae grow?
That does seem like a more likely scenario. You ain't got no fish, then the river becomes unhealthy and algae grows. Because we've spent a lot of time in a river and we see what happens. When the river water's flowing fresh, there's fish. Mm-hmm. And then when certain areas stop flowing, first the fish die, and then you see algae growing.
Right. And if you can if you can keep a pond stocked with fish, you don't get an algae problem. If the fish die and you don't replenish them, then you get algae problems.
Yeah. Now there are certain algae that grow despite having fish, and that you have to watch out for. I don't know what that is. I've been to a pond where he's like, no, he said the fish are still there. It's just that this algae's started growing out of it, and I have to deal with this, or else all the fish are going to die. It's eventually going to kill all the fish.
It must be because I thought part of it is that the fish consume the algae to some degree.
Right.
Maybe the fish can't eat this algae.
I guess there's certain kinds of algae that the fish don't eat. I remember because I had been fishing at this pond for a while, and then one year, it's like it started where I would throw my lure out and I'd bring it in and it'd have a little bit of algae on it, and it got to the point by the end of the summer it was like I just couldn't fish there. There were still fish there, but I would pull my lure and it'd be covered in algae, and I'd have to pull it all off before. And he told me, it's like some kind of weird species that just starts growing, and you got to get rid of it. There's some kind of chemical he could use to get rid of it, and the fish were still there, but this algae started growing real bad. Police in Nicaragua confirm that they have arrested a Roman Catholic bishop in Managua because that bishop was anti-Ortega. So I guess Ortega is the president there, and let me look this back up again real quick. So in Nicaragua, Jose Daniel Ortega Saavedra he's a politician serving as president right now. Actually, he's been serving since 2007, and this bishop was anti-Ortega, and they arrested him and said that any further provocation and destabilization activities amongst the clergy would be dealt with. So I don't know, just one of those. Finally, a bishop probably speaking up against something that everybody knows, and
that was wrong. Yeah,
federal police are coming down on it.
Those middle American countries. I mean, it's like you have a dictator in place, and then some revolutionary acquires enough popularity to overthrow him, and then he becomes a new dictator.
Yeah, and it's just like this endless circle.
Did exactly that. Excuse me.
Yeah. The Prime Minister at Singapore, let's see. Singapore will decriminalize sex between men, which was illegal under a colonial era law. But it's also amending the Constitution to define marriage as a heterosexual union. So they're saying you're not going to be arrested for having sex with men, for men having sex with men, but we're also putting in the Constitution, you can't call it marriage.
Okay.
So a win and a loss, but
that's
an
interesting approach.
I guess like there's two sides of the coin, and he's trying to straddle the fence. I think. I don't know. It's like
what it really. So here's the thing: is heterosexual fornication illegal in Singapore? Then it must not be, because it would be weird to say two unmarried men you can go make it, but an unmarried man and an unmarried woman. Although you know what, not necessarily. If you look at it from a government motivational point of view, the idea of marriage is that, hey, if you're going to do something that has the possibility of producing a child, you first have to make a commitment to each other that provides a stable home for that child.
Yeah.
And so that I could actually see a government going that direction.
Or I could see it's like, all right, these men want to have sex. So I'm going to make this big grand gesture, which will make me popular to say, sure, you can have sex. I'm also going to sneak into the Constitution that sex is specifically a heterosexual union. Not shedding any light on the fact that it's illegal to have sex outside of marriage.
Oh, and then,
so I've really done nothing.
So, what happens is they don't start getting rounded up for homosexual acts. Instead, it's just plain old fornication.
Yeah, we're not arresting you for sodomy. We're arresting you for sex outside of marriage. I don't think that's what happened, but that would be funny.
So, but yeah, that's.
I don't know. In Singapore, were they really arresting men for having sex with each other? Was that really a thing?
I don't know. I don't think it was a thing that was going on. It's just that it happened to still be on the books.
Yeah. Speaking of gay sex, monkeypox cases have been reported in all 50 states.
Ah, okay.
Now,
yep, there it is. It's the new AIDS.
I've heard that they found a dog with monkeypox. And then they found out the dog actually shared the bed with 2 gay men. And it looks like maybe those gay men had sex with the dog.
Oh my gosh.
I'm sorry, hopefully nobody's listening to this with their kids, but I mean, it's too late now, we've already said all of it. But, look, monkeypox, more and more it's looking like is a gay disease.
Yep.
It just is. Not even a VD. It's a gay disease.
Oh, right.
The Dugong. Have you ever heard of the Dugong?
No.
It's kind of like a.
Oh, like a manatee sort of thing.
Yeah, it's kind of like a manatee. China is saying the dugong is extinct in China.
Oh, wow.
But they do exist in parts of Southeast Asia and Australia, Asia. Mm-hmm. So they're not completely extinct, but they are extinct in China. Look, China is brutal on their environment.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people know, but just kind of ignore. But China has no interest in preserving the environment. They don't do it the way Americans do it. So it's not surprising that animals would become extinct in China.
Right.
I don't think it's that big a deal. But 2 men are found guilty of conspiring to obtain a weapon of mass destruction for use in the kidnapping. So. I guess 2 guys who were had a hung jury went back, and they were found guilty.
They were retried, and
they weren't.
What they're found guilty of is not conspiracy to kidnap, but conspiracy to obtain a weapon of mass destruction.
Yeah, and one of them is also convicted of an explosive charge. I don't know if he was convicted of conspiracy to obtain an explosive charge or from having it. Or... I think having one. Again, look, we all know what happened here. The FBI started this, and somehow they found a way to charge these 2 guys and make it stick. It's a shame, but these guys were, well, we've already talked about them. You know, they were just a couple of idiots, and it's really sad that this could happen.
Easily manipulated.
I guess. The lesson here is watch what you say, and I don't know, don't be a bragger. These guys were sitting around bragging about what they were going to do, and the FBI hears them and says, "Oh, I can make them do it," and then arrest them for it. And that's what happened. And it's an absolute outrage. Germany and French rail transport manufacturer Alstom inaugurated the world's first fleet of hydrogen fuel-powered trains. They've got 14 hydrogen trains to replace some of the diesel locomotives. I don't know about this. I mean, first of all, I know that it's not in any way saving energy, but I don't understand. Are they traveling around with giant tanks of hydrogen, or are they making their hydrogen as they go? Do you know how much electricity it takes to make enough hydrogen to power a train? How could they even make that enough electricity?
Well, that's the thing.
I don't think that engine could power itself.
In order to... No, well, it couldn't. Because in order to make the hydrogen, you have to do something like electrolyze water. But I'm kind of... Since you did that, I looked up, well, okay, how do hydrogen fuel cell cars work? And it says that they're powered by compressed hydrogen gas that feeds into an onboard fuel cell stack, doesn't burn the gas, but transforms the fuel's chemical energy into electrical energy. Well, how does that...
What?
Is it like
That's leaving something out.
Is it electrolysis in reverse? I'm trying to find something that's not put out by the government.
So they're saying that they can transform the hydrogen into electricity without burning it?
That's what I'm trying to find out, is how do they actually work? I
don't know why. I kind of don't believe it.
I
don't know. Maybe.
Well, think about this. You take the process of electrolysis. You run electricity through water, through some kind of impure water. You can't do it with distilled water.
And you get oxygen
and
hydrogen.
Oxygen and hydrogen. Well, there might be a way to run that process in reverse, not as a burn, but as a process that allows them to recombine, releasing the electrical energy back into whatever it is you want to power.
But if they did that, that means they're driving around with hydrogen tanks.
It does mean they're driving around with compressed hydrogen, which means
that
it has to be... Well, I mean, I guess...
And they're still using oxygen, too.
So if you get... Like, let's say your hydrogen tank gets punctured and there's some kind of a spark. Well, gasoline... Okay, gasoline tanks do explode. Cars do explode from gasoline and so on and so forth. But...
Well, think the Hindenburg.
Gasoline has a fairly narrow flammable saturation point. That if it's too saturated, it won't catch. And if it's too diffused in the air, it won't catch.
Okay.
But with hydrogen, I think hydrogen has a lot broader range where that can be a problem, as long as there's enough oxygen.
Yeah.
So, I don't know. I'm curious. I want to do some more research and find out how dangerous this could really be.
Yeah. I look, you can't make me believe that this is any more energy efficient than a diesel engine. I don't know. Maybe than a diesel. No. I mean, you'd have to have a giant... you had to get the hydrogen somehow. How do you get hydrogen normally? Where does hydrogen come from? Do they make it?
I think they can only make hydrogen through electrolysis.
Yeah. So they make hydrogen, and then they recombine it to make electricity. Well...
Okay, so I'm watching a very cartoonish animation of a hydrogen fuel cell. And it looks like the hydrogen come in with... basically, it strips off one of the electrons from the hydrogen, or maybe both electrons, I don't know. This is very cartoonish.
Okay.
But it somehow strips the electrons from the hydrogen, allows the hydrogen to pass through ionized to the other side of the cell where it recombines with the oxygen. But in order to recombine, it needs that electron back, and it forces the electron to travel through a path that powers something.
Okay.
Now, like I said, this is very cartoonish. I'm sure it's like incredibly simplified, but it looks like that's the basic idea.
All right. Okay. I don't think it's any better than a diesel engine, though. Because you gotta make the hydrogen first, and that took a bunch of electricity. So, I guess maybe it would be like having an electric train. I guess maybe that could be it wouldn't be cleaner than a diesel engine. Of course, a power plant is incredibly clean compared to, say, 5 million cars.
Right.
But the transfer of that energy, I don't know. Someday we'll have to, I mean, there are so many lies told about fossil fuels. It's as bad as the lies told about overpopulation.
Right.
You know, they've built up a whole industry around us not having enough fossil fuels. And it's silly because we have plenty. Yeah. And we're not going to run out. I don't think we'll ever run out.
Soon.
Because it's looking more and more like it's not a one-time event that created a bunch of fossil fuels. It looks like it's an ongoing thing that the Earth is constantly creating these fuels.
Oh, right.
Maybe not all of them, but we're not going to run out of fuel. That's all the news I got.
Oh,
but you...
Okay.
You were supposed to look something up. Remember the airplane that fell apart in the sky?
I do remember that. What was I supposed to look up?
Find out which airline it came from.
Oh.
Well, I tried to find it, and I couldn't. Nobody's saying where it came from.
I don't remember that I was supposed to... I was just saying that I'm positive that somebody like the NTSB knows which airline and which flight it was.
Yeah. But nobody's saying. And I looked all over to try to find it.
That is interesting.
It's weird that nobody would report. You'd think at least one reporter would be like, oh, I'm going to find out who did this.
I know. Just like some kind
of... breaking news. But nobody's doing it, and nobody knows. So...
Okay, well, I do not have that, but I do have. I only have 3 stories this time. It's a slow, weird news week. One of them is a 81-year-old woman that was nabbed in Poland with 5 kilos of heroin in her suitcase.
5 kilos of heroin, and she kept it in her suitcase?
In her suitcase, 81 years old.
Wow.
They were suspicious of her itinerary, I guess, and her uneasy behavior. It doesn't really say, anything about comments from her, but she said she denied any wrongdoing and said family members had given her the suitcase with gifts for relatives in Canada. So
Canada,
I'm thinking
from Poland to Canada.
Well, she was traveling through Poland from.
Okay.
From Kenya.
Okay, from Africa.
From Africa.
Through Poland
to Canada.
And she kept it in her suitcase.
Her suitcase. And they got suspicious at her behavior, which makes me think that somebody managed to talk her into it. She wasn't a regular drug mule.
Yeah. It was, it's, I guess, kind of a little bit sad.
Yeah. Taking advantage of an old woman like that.
Obviously, yeah. If she had kind of funny behavior, then it's like, yeah, she's not used to doing this. You'd think she would have found a better way of doing it if she wasn't used to doing it. Like, I know I could never smuggle anything through an airport because I would be shaking and scared to death. I'd be like, oh no, they're going to...
So hard for me to be dishonest.
I see some people do dishonest things, and they're as cool as cucumbers, and I don't even get it because, like, even telling a white lie, I literally get the shakes.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh no, I just lied. He's gonna be able to tell, and then I finally come out and say, look, I just told you a lie. I didn't do that.
Hey, I love those earrings. Oh, shoot.
Yeah, no.
What do I do?
I hate those earrings. I have never told my wife that looks good for the sake of getting her to hurry up and get ready.
Uh-huh. Yeah, that's fine. Just go.
Yeah, I have never done that.
Although, there's lots of times when my wife has, like, indecision about something that I don't care. I don't have an opinion, but I will...
Yeah, I'll do... Okay, yeah.
I'll express an opinion, in order to get her to get moving.
Yeah.
I'll say it as though I care.
I don't care. It's just to say, does this look all right? And if I don't think it looks all right, I'll say, no, I think you should lose the...
But a lot of times, well, should I wear this red shirt or this green sweater? Or something like that. So, well, okay, I don't care which, really.
Doesn't matter.
In order to make you feel like I care, wear the red shirt.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
So, next, we were talking about Yellowstone earlier, and apparently they found a human foot inside of a shoe in one of the hot springs in Yellowstone.
I wonder, did it float up, or...
Well, they said it was in Abyss Pool, which I'm trying to look up Abyss Pool real quick to see if hot spring in the West Thumb Geyser Basin, because I'm kind of wondering if I actually went there when I was in Yellowstone.
And a nearby parking lot were temporarily closed, but it has since reopened. Oh, it was only closed because they found a foot.
But yeah, it was closed but they're saying that it suggests that an incident involving an individual occurred on the morning of July 31st. Likely occurred...
That's probably just when they found it.
Oh, that could be. But it's like, how do you lose... How does your foot become separated from you with no foul play?
Yeah, that's not possible, I don't think. Unless somebody fell in there and... No, I don't know. If your foot's separated from your body, there was probably foul play.
Now, this particular one, it says that this hot spring...
Oh! Are there bears in Yellowstone?
Oh, I wonder... Yeah, that could be. Yes,
or wolves.
They're black bears. I mean, I don't think they're like grizzlies or anything.
Okay, but if there are wolves, let's say somebody fell and died, and then wolves ate most of them, but the foot was left over because it's in a shoe, and that gets washed down from a rainstorm or melting snow or something like
Ends
that.
up in one of these hot springs.
That could be.
Yeah. Well, these hot springs are interesting in Yellowstone. They have this kind of a rainbow effect with like yellow on the outer and then red and then eventually it turns like a deep green or blue in the middle. And they explained that what's actually going on is that there are algae growing on these that are what do they call extremophile. They like the extreme temperature, the hot temperatures. But the way it works is that the different kind of algae like the different temperature gradients, and by the time you get into the middle of these hot springs, it's too hot for any algae at all.
So these hot springs are really, really hot. Like you couldn't go swimming in them? I just lost him. Hold on. Let's see what's happening. There he is. All right, you there? Hold on. Okay. So I've never been to Yellowstone. You can't go swimming in these hot springs, can you?
No way. No, you'd boil.
They're real
some
hot.
Of them,
okay.
Like this one they're talking about gets up to approximately 140 degrees, and that's not a super hot one.
Wow. So,
these are not the kinds of things that you would want to take a bath in. And they can be dangerous because what happens is, it's like, okay, so you see like a hot spring, like a pool, where, okay, there's a hot spring, and you think, oh, that's cool. I could walk up to the edge and look down. But in reality, the way they're shaped underneath, because of, it's like a huge geological plumbing system. But you see the hole in the ground, and if you're standing next to the edge of that hole, you might be standing on rock that's only a couple inches thick.
And it might
because the hole
break
balls out underneath.
Okay.
And caves out. So that's why in a lot of places in Yellowstone, I mean, it's they've built wooden planks for places, and we were the guy who was our tour guide. We did one of those bus tour things to the various points northwest, and he said that there's this one area in Yellowstone, a common place people go, and they've got these parking lots set up, but it's very geologically active, and there's this parking lot that suddenly, right in the middle of the parking lot, it opened up, and there was a geyser there then.
Wow. So I mean, like, okay, Yellowstone Park, it like gets cold there and it snows and stuff, right?
I don't know how cold it gets. I guess it does somewhat get cold there, but let me see. That's a good question.
Hold on, let me look where Yellowstone is. I don't even know where it is.
Average, okay, it gets around snowy cold. So December 26 degrees, January 28, February 31.
Yeah, you're in Wyoming. It gets cold up there, and it snows.
But
so like the wildlife, do they just stay away from those hot springs? Don't they ever come to try to drink or something like that?
No, there's rivers and stuff there where they can go get water.
Okay.
I mean, once in a while. I mean, I think they seem to kind of know where they can go and where they can't. There's moose up there and buffalo and of course lots of.
Yeah, that's what I thought. There's like bison and stuff.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Huh. Yeah, I've never been. I always thought, man, that'd be a fun
worth
place
a trip,
to go, but
if you can.
I'm sure it
make
is.
It work.
Yeah. Wow.
All right. And last, this was something. It's just kind of. It occurred to me. It's kind of funny. I was actually using the way that like elementary particles can be in. I'm using air quotes when I say be in other particles, like a proton. A proton is like one of the heavier particles within the nucleus of an atom. You got protons and neutrons, and then of course the super light particles are the electrons. Well, the protons themselves are composed, and when you say composed, you got to kind of use air quotes, of quarks. But they're only composed of quarks in the sense that they can decay into quarks. But the quarks themselves, it's not like a house is composed of bricks. When you think of a house being composed of bricks, the brick is there as a brick, even as it's part of your house. But the quarks in a proton aren't there as quarks. They don't have existence as quarks that are, doing quirky things as part of a proton. It's just that the proton can be forced to decompose into quarks, and they can get that to happen with like high-speed colliders and stuff like that. But there is this, they found this interesting quark in that it rarely shows up when they get the protons to decay, but it can show up, and there's a quark that can decay out of a proton that is like 1.5 times the mass of the proton.
So the proton gets bigger instead of smaller.
Well, the thing that the
proton
broke down into is one of it's bigger than the proton.
Okay,
I guess it's like
that's interesting.
Those old cartoons when you see like the Warner Brothers, like Sylvester the Cat, and you'll see one of these like gangster cars drive up, and it's this tiny car, and then like this goon steps out that's like
giant guy comes out.
Yeah, it's kind of like that.
It's like the Simpsons when there's a kid on the Simpsons who's always laughing at people, and they always and there's one where he sees this guy in a real tiny car, but the guy's obviously kind of big. And he looks at him and points and goes, yeah! And then the car stops. And this giant guy gets out. It is one of the funniest scenes in the whole series. And he takes he's running away from him, but the guy just takes 2 steps and catches up with him. It's one of my favorite Simpsons scenes.
Yeah, that's another series that I never bothered to watch.
I wouldn't even suggest it. I mean, I do there's a lot of funny things in The Simpsons, but look, a
lot of better stuff to spend your time on.
It's just that, well, of course they've got 20-something seasons, and after season 10, then it's not worth watching anymore. But my second time watching the series, I just realized it's like these people do nothing but make fun of Christians.
Oh,
Christians are constantly the butt of the joke. And at a certain point, I got tired of that. I don't watch Big Bang Theory. I don't watch Simpsons anymore because of that. And I will say, King of the Hill does not do that.
Huh, that's interesting.
It's actually kind of the opposite. Anyway, so the quark is bigger than the proton it used to be.
Yeah, or rather, the proton is smaller than this quark that made it that went into making it.
Okay, but does anything else get involved in making these quarks?
Well, the quarks are fundamental particles, whereas the proton is not. The proton decays into quarks. The quarks themselves don't decay. And so they say that a proton is composed of three quarks, but sometimes one of those three quarks can be this charmed quark that is like more massy than the proton itself.
There was a time, I think, that we thought the protons were fundamental particles.
Yes.
Yeah?
Yeah.
I wonder if someday we'll be like, hey, these quarks are turning into something else.
They're made of, yeah.
They're not so fundamental.
Could be. All right.
And
that is all I have in terms of news.
All right.
But we do have another Bible trivia, and I have this dice roller so that I can figure out which. So I've got this card. I think I explained it last time. They've got the categories that are basically the colors of Trivial Pursuit. I'm just going to roll a die. There's 6 different categories, and the top is number 1, and the bottom is 6. And so I'm going to roll the die and see what we come up with. And it is a 4. So,
which is what kind of question?
Hold on. Category number 4 is places.
All right. I'm terrible. I'm terrible with modern day geography. And you take me into the Bible and I'm even worse. But I'm going to try to answer the question with the help of...
This one is kind of easy in the sense that it would be kind of dumb for it to be anywhere else than this. The question is, where did the devil have Jesus stand when he said to him, "If you are the Son of God, throw yourself down from here"?
On a mountaintop, but I don't know which mountain.
I don't think it was any particular mountain. I think it just said it was like
on a hill,
a parapet or something like that.
Yeah.
But he took
him to the Grand Canyon.
Yeah, that's right. He could have taken him anywhere in the world because he was showing him all the kingdoms of the earth. The official answer on the back of the card is on the highest point of the temple. So it says the temple. I'm not sure I believe that, but maybe. But here like in Matthew, it says he set him on the pinnacle of the temple. So that would be true.
Okay.
Now, here's... Okay, I'm going to say something interesting in a minute, but first I want to find the other account of the temptation, which is... So that was actually...
I thought it was only...
Matthew. So I want to... Because Luke has a different account of the temptation.
I did not... Okay, so does
Okay,
Mark.
so in Luke, he took him to Jerusalem and set him on the pinnacle of the temple. So both times they said pinnacle of the temple. But here's what's
I thought it was a mountain always.
I don't know why I thought mountain too. I always thought that's what it was.
Okay.
But here's the difference. In Matthew, both of them start with this, hey, convert these stones into bread. In Matthew, he goes from there to the temple and says, throw yourself down.
Yeah.
And then he shows him the kingdoms of the world and says, if you worship me, I'll give you all these kingdoms. In Luke, he goes from the turn these stones into bread and does the kingdoms of the world first, and then he does the temple, throw yourself down, as the third temptation. So the
devil led him to a high mountain and showed him all the kingdoms of the world.
Yeah, but the question is, where did he take them when he said, "Throw yourself down from here if you're the Son of God"?
Oh, yeah. Okay. For some reason, I
mixed the two up too. I confused them.
Yeah.
But my point is that Matthew and Luke swap the second and third temptations.
Mark goes from bread to showing them the kingdoms and offering them him the kingdoms, and then goes to throw yourself down.
So I think Mark is. I think Mark matches Matthew then.
Yeah.
But Matthew and Luke swap numbers 2 and 3.
Okay.
So when you sit, because I used that, like somebody had brought up a some kind of like one of those moral dilemma things, and I said, well, this is like the second temptation of Christ. And then I went back and I read it, and it's like, oh shoot, I shouldn't have said that, because it was like one of those radio call-in shows.
It's the third one.
And I thought, oh shoot, it's the third temptation. And then I was reading the Bible later. It's like, no, I was right. That was the second temptation. Well, now I know that they're actually put in different orders.
Yeah. Well, we have a pretty interesting... one of the first shows that we did very, very long time ago, you gave a talk about all three of the temptations in 3 different shows.
Oh,
I would encourage someone to go all the way back to the beginning of our podcasts and listen to the talk you gave about the temptations. It gave me a lot to think about that I had never thought about before, and I would encourage people to go back and listen to those. They're pretty good.
All right. I don't
Alrighty
have.
then.
All right, so that's our Bible trivia for today.
And think about what we said. And as always,
go raw and circle the beads.
All right, we'll see you.
Bye, everyone.